Might be able to double stuff a Cyclops because they have 2 entrances instead of 1 and be able to change their baby with a little bit of baby batter if you use the second entrance. But what happens when you impregnate and the Cyclops ends up giving birth? That's right, we're going to be talking about the mating manual today and discussing from a societal standpoint what is the role of a mother and father, especially since there are 3 sexes. You have the male, the ma, the cheen, the female, and the original Cyclops, which has both organs, if you know what I mean. Don't forget, you can actually become a part of the mating manual by getting an original character on one of the breeding teams by grabbing a diamond or just supporting the mating manual with the ruby gold and get your own copy when it's finished. So because Cyclopses have 3 sexes and each sex is unique in terms of their own capabilities, especially the cheens who are vastly intelligent but have no emotional intelligence, versus the ma, the men, who have a reduced intellectual capacity but an extremely high emotional intelligence. And that plays into the rearing of children. And the way it works is depending on what the child is going to be, whether it's going to be a ma, cheen, or ma cheen, will dictate where the majority of the time the child spends. And the thing to remember from prior videos is Cyclopses live in apartments basically called cuts. Every Cyclops has a cut in society. Even if 2 Cyclopses choose to stay together in one cut and sleep there, they both still have 2 cuts. And so as far as the government's concerned, the sex of the child's parent will dictate where they spend the most of the time. For example, a cheen will spend 75% of the time with a cheen. But if they're a ma, then they'll spend 75% of the time with the ma. And the same thing with the ma cheen. However, now the child from wandering age, which is around age 5, can go wherever they want. They can basically hang out with one parent as long as they are sleeping at the cut of the sex of the parent that they are, is what's important. For ma cheens, for example, because you need a ma and a cheen to create a cheen, and then the ma will go in the belly button entrance and convert that child from a cheen to a ma cheen. That means that some couples can basically have 3 parents. And so that means they'll spend 50% of the time with a ma cheen, and the other 25% will be split with the ma and the cheen. But whenever we look at a society standpoint at what the roles of a parent are, the mother has a very specific role in terms of education, because most Cyclops societies do not have public school systems. They don't really have dedicated professional teachers like what we would expect. The mother is responsible for the education of the child, educating them on social norms, educating them on history, educating them to basically be able to function, whether it is a ma cheen, or a cheen. But cheen are held to a much higher standard because a lot of their value is placed in intelligence. Cheen at the ages of 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 are basically given competitive tests against every other child at that age group. And if they are in the bottom 20%, they will be assigned something called an imprinter. An imprinter is what we would consider a professional teacher. And they basically take over the role of educating the child to ensure that, they're able to get caught up and not be in the bottom 20%. But for father's role in society, they are responsible for basically teaching the child social norms from an emotional standpoint, a social standpoint. They are responsible for ensuring the child, especially for ma and ma cheens, develop emotional intelligence. But from a war standpoint, mas are responsible for ensuring their children can meet the standard, which is being able to lift 12 tons and break a giggernaut. A giggernaut is basically a collection of organs from a sinkhost that are basically tied together and dried and create a really hard substance, and they're responsible for breaking something called a giggernaut. The ma maintain that standard from the time that they are children all the way up until they basically pass it or hit adulthood. That is the standard that they are constantly held to. Obviously, a 2-year-old isn't going to be able to lift 12 tons, but that is a stagnant standard goal that as they grow up, they can constantly measure that achievement, that they are getting closer to it. On top of having not only physical goals, but intellectual goals, ma cheen have a special thing that they, as children, have to achieve, which is learning to use magic. And magic, if you know anything about the world, as we saw in one of my mangas, is very dangerous. Look at Pan putting in all this warp. If you're not careful, you can end up eye-mipping, which has a pretty disastrous result for the caster. In fact, it accounts for more than 20% of total deaths of all ma cheen. That's just a sample of what you're going to get with the mating manual and the lore around it. I'm doing a big release, so either grab a ruby gold or get a character in the series by grabbing a diamond and see what's coming. And also, you can read all my series online for free because I only ever paywall the last chapter of each book.